Welcome to part 8 of this Peatland ACTION mini-series on how to complete the spatial data template. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to use measurement tables within the template and how these can be used to populate the application form or final report document. So you've downloaded the latest spatial data template from the Peatland ACTION website and added a site outline for your site alongside features in the relevant attribute tables, and finally digitized a restoration footprint. You've undertaken some self-QA and now you're ready to submit your data. Alongside the spatial data, you need to complete your application form, and we've added some useful layers in the measurement tables autocomplete group to help you do this. The first 7 tables are all measurement tables, and these are automatically summing the total lengths, areas and counts of the features within the layers in the spatial tables group above. Therefore, you can directly copy this information into the application form or the final report template before you submit your data. In this way, you can ensure that the spatial data you're submitting alongside your application is in agreement with the figures in the application form. I'll open a copy of the application form template to the left and go through how to copy data from the spatial data template into the application form. Once you've opened your application form, scroll down to section 39. Reading this text, you'll see that it refers to other guidance material that's included in the spatial data template packs and that's been referred to in video 4 of this Peatland ACTION mini-series, covering how to generate your restoration footprint. You'll note that the code B and the code C tables covering the current use and Peatland condition match 2 of the columns in the site outline layer in the spatial data. Scrolling down, you can see the first table that needs to be completed from the spatial data. This table contains information about your site or sites, and it's important that the number of sites in the spatial data corresponds with the number of rows completed in this table. Please also ensure that the site IDs in column 1 align with the site IDs in the site outline layer in the spatial data template. You can take the current use and the Peatland condition from the spatial data, and then the area of each Peatland site to be restored in hectares in column 7 of the application table can be populated from the footprint area measurement table. To open this table, expand the autocomplete measurement tables group in the spatial data by clicking on the arrow to the left. Then locate the restoration footprint area table and right-click Open Attribute Table. A new window will pop up and you can copy the value in the area hectares column by selecting that cell, right-clicking and selecting to copy cell content. This can then be pasted directly into the site outline table in section 39 of the application. Please then adjust this figure so that it's rounded to 2 decimal places as per the other auto measurement tables. In this example, we can see from the spatial data that there's only 1 site to be added into this table, so we can now move on to section 40 below. As per the heading, all of the planned site-based restoration activities must be listed in the tables below. The site IDs must correspond with those provided in the table above in section 39, and where multiple sites are being submitted, the individual techniques must be broken down per site in this section. To add a new row to any of the tables, just click on the blue plus at the bottom right-hand corner of the existing row. In order to find the information for table 40A, locate the Restoration Lines Measurements table in the Measurement Tables Autocomplete group. Select the layer and right-click, opening the attribute table. In this example, there are 2 rows in the measurement table, which suggests that there are 2 techniques being applied, and that there should be 2 rows completed in table 40A in the application form. However, if we take a closer look into the restoration lines layer, you'll see that the other Please Specify in Notes technique is actually associated with a watercourse, and therefore it doesn't need to be added to table 40A as it isn't a restoration activity. This isn't always the case, and the other Please Specify in Notes technique can be associated with restoration, but it's always worth checking the details provided in the notes column for this technique. Note that for the restoration lines layer, the track technique can also be omitted from the table 40A. In the application form, both the technique and the material used are restricted to a list of values which can be accessed via a drop-down menu. These correspond with the restricted values available in the spatial data template and shouldn't be overwritten. Use the notes column to add any extra details out with the template if required. You'll see that there's only 1 place for the primary restoration technique in the application form, as this is what's used to estimate project costs. If a secondary technique has been applied, then you can add this into the notes column. For table 40B discrete features, information can be found within the restoration points count table. Dam locations, especially non-peat dams, are requested for final report stage. However, these are not required at application stage, so this second table is often blank. You may choose to estimate the number of dams required based on the total length and the average spacing of dams for a blocking technique applied, but specific locations do not need to be provided in the spatial data at application stage. So this is one instance where the application form and the spatial data can differ. For 40C, the features that are measured by area, this information can be populated directly from the restoration area measurements table. So in this example, there's just a single feature in the area-based restoration layer. Right-click and open the attribute table and copy across the cell content for the area before filling in the technique. The 40D table, forest to bog, can be populated on the forest to bog area in the measurement tables group, so right-click and open the attribute table for this. As per the area-based restoration, there's only one instance of forest to bog restoration in this example. Copy the area using copy cell content and paste it into table 40D, and select the restoration technique from the drop-down menu in the application form. Note that where the spatial data allows for multiple selection in the restoration techniques field, only one can be selected in the application form. Where more than one technique's been applied, either use the Other Please Specify in Notes option to state both techniques in the notes field of table 40D in the application form, or select the main technique and then provide any secondary techniques in the notes field. Finally, add any areas of bare peat stabilisation to the table 40E from the bare peat stabilisation measurements table in the GIS template. Sphagnum spreading is often included in the application form as the full site hectares in table 40E, but is absent in the spatial data. Whilst it is acceptable to not provide locations for sphagnum transplants or donor sites at application stage, it is recommended that the estimation of work provided in the report is reasonable and not a direct copy of the total hectares, as this creates difficulties when costing the project. Table 40F in the application form isn't related to any of the spatial table layers in GIS, however best judgment should be used to ensure that the spatial data and application form match as far as possible. We are always looking for ways we can update and improve the application process. Looking into the future, it's likely that we will provide the opportunity for applicants to give some details on how they've mapped the site, for instance, what data sources have been used, as well as how much ground truthing has been undertaken. This will help Peatland Action have confidence in the level of mapping and mitigate against changes to costings as the project develops. There are other videos in this Peatland Action mini-series on how to complete the spatial data template, including how to download the template from the website, adding features into the different layers, and how to undertake some self-QA prior to submitting your application. These are all available on the NatureScott Peatland Action webpage.